Hey everybody, welcome back to Linux for Everyone and welcome home. I'm Jason and I am joined by gaming guru Matt DLN, who has done a couple of videos on the channel before, but I wanted to get him on this video because Microsoft, who is a friend or an enemy to Linux, depending on your point of view, recently rocked the gaming world by announcing that they are purchasing Zenimax Bethesda for $7.5 billion in cash, and now they own a whole bunch of franchises that a lot of us really adore. So I wanted to get you onto the channel and talk about the implications that this might have or might not have.
So the implication, well, it's not just about what it affects in Linux gaming. That I think that's kind of narrow scoped too much.
Okay.
Because if you look at Zenimax as a company, you have id Software. So there's your Doom games. You have Arcane Studios. There's your Dishonored games, your Prey games. Obviously Bethesda. So there's your Elder Scrolls and what's the other one? Starfield and
Starfield.
A bunch of other games. Those franchises have potentially become exclusives,
which is massive. Well, they've become console exclusives.
Well,
or Xbox console exclusives, but I'm sure they're going to be on PC.
Microsoft's secret sauce to, like, if you've even looked at this generation of stuff, they have a $300 Xbox Series S. That's the low end system. It's $300. Game Pass is going to be the subscription service that they're offering with Game Pass. That's their secret sauce. Sony kind of lost the ball on that one, even though they had something similar with their services, and they massively dropped the ball.
PlayStation Plus, right?
PlayStation Plus, PlayStation Now, all the streaming stuff that they've had. That doesn't include what Microsoft's looking to do with xCloud. So the fact that these are potentially exclusives now to Game Pass, that's a huge thing. Granted, there is a joke that Microsoft spent $7.5 billion so Todd Howard couldn't sell Skyrim to a toaster this time.
But maybe there'll be a little bit more quality control enforced onto Bethesda Game Studios, and we'll get a little bit less buggy versions of Fallout and Elder Scrolls.
The only problem I have with this entire thing, the games like Fallout 4 and Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3, even Skyrim, Oblivion, those games have had longevity, not because of the company behind it. Those games have had longevity and continued sales on PC, computers, call it whatever you want, because of the modding community. Microsoft, you talk about community all the time. They say they quote unquote heart Linux. Well, do you heart the modding community? That's where my concern is, because if they take all those mods away, I don't see those franchises doing nearly as well as they did or continue to do.
So do you think that this purchase throws the modding community and Linux gaming out into the cold?
See, here, this is the weird thing, because Microsoft has done stranger things. They've released like the Halo Master Chief Collection on Steam. They allow you to disable EAC.
I wanted to point that out. Like, for all the people who always hate on Microsoft, that they made that decision so that I could actually play the Master Chief Collection on Linux. Maybe that's not necessarily why they did it, but that enabled it. And I was actually grateful for that. But haven't they also recently snatched up studios who were developing Linux native versions of their games?
You're referring to Obsidian.
And Double Fine also.
Double Fine was and Exile and Double Fine were the others that you had mentioned. They also purchased Ninja Theory as well. For those that don't know what Ninja Theory was, they did the DMC Devil May Cry remake,
right?
And they did Heavenly Sword and Enslaved Odyssey. Enslaved Odyssey.
Enslaved is such a gem. Like, if you haven't played Enslaved Odyssey to the West, go play that game.
Good game.
Andy Serkis was actually involved in that game.
Same with Heavenly Sword.
Fantastic studio.
They have gone on a spree, and that means there is potentially less good CRPGs now for Linux. So that means your Pillars of Eternity. That means your Tyranny. That means your Torment, Tides of Numenera type games. We don't know what they're going to do. We know that DX12 is being rolled into Proton in some way, shape, or form, or the support for it. Would I love to see Microsoft actually contribute in some way or shape or form to that particular project, I would love it. Do I see it? I don't know. Microsoft is very business focused, and say what you want about these companies, and people will say, "Oh, well, they're not contributing to open source." They've given us Microsoft Teams, they've given us Microsoft Edge. 10 years ago, you would have been laughed out of the room if you said Microsoft is going to put a browser on Linux. So stranger things have happened.
If Microsoft can at least allow these studios to continue publishing on Steam, that alone gives us a bit more of a chance to experience these games on Linux via Proton or via Lutris or whatever. But if they're locked into the Windows Store, forget it.
I can only go by what I've seen and what Phil Spencer, the guy in charge of Xbox game division now, has said, is that they are trying to get rid of more of the UMP, but like that installer format.
Thank God.
And stick with the more traditional 32, 64 kind of stuff. So you can actually have things like adjustable screen resolution. Thank you, Quantum Break, for not being able to do that, because that got released on the Windows Store and you couldn't actually adjust the resolution. It was your resolution was what it was.
Man.
Or cap frame rates was another one. Like I think there was another game. Was the Rise of Tomb Raider? I think it was capped at 30 frames.
30 frames is not more cinematic. Screw you.
Tell us how you really feel about Ubisoft.
Maybe not Linux related, but I want to get your take on Microsoft and this next generation of gaming, whether that's on PC or on console. Microsoft is not messing around anymore. They are not messing around. Between EA Play being part of Game Pass now at no extra charge yet, and this purchase of Bethesda, these are like no more Elder Scrolls on PlayStation, no more Fallout on PlayStation. Those are behemoth franchises, and like you said, they have longevity. They have the ability to sustain people's interest throughout an entire console cycle. How does Sony compete, or do they even try?
I think that's why you're seeing things like Horizon Zero Dawn on PC. Can Sony do better than what they did when they initially launched Horizon Zero Dawn on PC? Yes, they can.
And you know what, gamers? Let me tell you this. All you Microsoft haters out there, you have Microsoft to thank for the fact that Sony is putting games like Death Stranding and Horizon Zero Dawn on PC.
Horizon Zero Dawn, barring the performance stuff, I've not heard one bad thing about the gameplay, the world, like the actual overall substance of that game.
That is such a perfect example of detailed, engaging world building. Everything in that world is I feel like someone lived it and just brought it to life for the rest of us.
Microsoft is making up for a lot of mistakes with the Xbox One. The initial launch in 2000.
TV and Connect, guys. It's the future.
And sports.
Sports, yes.
I think Microsoft is trying to reevaluate their studio strategy, because really, if you look at the studios they've purchased, they had Rare making Connect games. Sony, over the course of time, has been looking at selling experiences with their first party games. Playing Infamous 1, Infamous 2, Second Son. Say what you want about the Killzone games.
I loved them. I love all of Sony's first party stuff. All of it.
And that's the thing. Everyone's a unique experience. The formula might be kind of formulaic, like kind of semi-open world-ish kind of deals and that kind of stuff. The new God of War that came out. I was never really I like God of War, but I was never a big God of War fan. The new one I like a lot. And it's because it's different. Sony sells experiences. That's how they compete. The PS3, like later in life, that's how it competed, was by having those unique experiences, because it got trounced in the 360 life cycle. I remember playing games that were just poorly optimized, terrible. Like, oh my God, they were bad.
It's hilarious to me that Sony got beaten so hard in that console generation when the 360 was the Red Ring of Death debacle. I mean, where at one point, 60% of the Xbox 360s that were produced were potatoes. I mean, literal duds. They were lemons. They were breaking. And I cannot believe that Microsoft even recovered from that.
Microsoft took $1 billion hit for that recall program. $1 billion.
So to put that $1 billion in perspective, Microsoft bought Zenimax, Bethesda for $7.5 billion, right? Sony's, not PlayStation, Sony's, the entire company. Sony's operating revenue between 2013 and 2019 was just over $8 billion. The entire corporation globally. Kind of a drop in the bucket for Microsoft.
It was their operating profit.
Oh, operating profit. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Just
I don't really think this hurts Sony. I don't think this hurts PS5. I don't think this hurts Sony as much as people think it's going to hurt Sony. They still have the first party franchises that people come to Sony for, right? It's not like those are going away. It just means people are still going to buy a PlayStation 5 to play the next Uncharted, the next God of War, the next, Horizon. The difference is this time they might also have to get an Xbox, but they're still going to buy that PS5. If they're a PlayStation fan and they want those franchises, I don't think Sony is going to completely lose their business because of this acquisition.
Microsoft is going to probably have a stronger first party lineup, a lot stronger.
Wow.
Which
is crazy to think about, right? I mean, what are their marquee first party titles besides Halo?
Forza.
Okay, Forza. I love the Forza games, but that's not what brings the masses.
No, that's not what brings the masses. So you have Halo, you have Gears of War, but you can probably say that they're kind of interchangeable. That's really all they had. This generation was kind of bunk for Microsoft. Not gonna lie, they had a few interesting experiments that they tried that didn't work. Quantum Break was one of them, where it was a mix of live action with video game stuff, where choices did kind of matter.
See also Night Trap. Sorry.
And it got a release 25 years later on the Nintendo Switch.
Man, that's so crazy. That is just wild.
For a game that was banned just because they wanted an ESRB.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to add about this Microsoft Bethesda thing as it relates to Linux gaming? What do you think?
As far as it relates to Linux gaming, I think the effect is it's too early to tell. This is going to sound bad, but Linux users tend to be far too reactionary when it comes to stuff like this. I'm not going to assume the worst, but I'm also not going to assume the best. This is a for-profit company. They're going to do what's best for the bottom line. Now, hey, if they allow me to, play Halo or, insert game here without like easy anti-cheat or whatever on Steam through Proton, and that's like an ancillary effect, I don't care.
It does cost Microsoft extra manpower, resources, money to make a dedicated Linux native version of one of their first party games. It does not, in my opinion, cost them anything to simply not use invasive DRM and just test it against Proton. If it's on Steam and there's not any invasive DRM, and it's a single-player game like Elder Scrolls, it doesn't cost them anything to make sure that is enabled for Linux compatibility, right?
You are correct, but on the same note, they are going to squeeze every dollar they can get out of something. And at the end of the day, if that means they can cut a loss and don't have to put an operating budget on something, they're going to trim that anywhere they can.
I guess that's just the optimist in me that would like to believe that, Elder Scrolls 6 is going to just run on Steam Proton day one.
I am hopeful because there are some games, I'm not going to lie, that have come out day one and they just work perfectly on, barring something that relies on like easy anti-cheat, like a portion of the game relying on that. Some of the SAO games come to mind: Fatal Bullet, Alicization, Licorice. Those worked out of the box day one, no configuration. You just can't use the online, but the single player is totally playable and good. So if they do something like that, I'm fine with that. Like that, it's their choice at the end of the day. The community can either vote with their wallet. The Microsoft will get the feedback from the Proton use if there's Proton use. Like unfortunately, I'm kind of jaded because I've been in and out of the industry for so long when it comes to games that you get a little jaded and just kind of see the business side of it.
Yeah, but I think that if you keep the business side of it in mind, you also have a more informed and realistic perspective of the industry. I don't always like to have that realistic view, but it's true. You know, this does come down, unfortunately, with many things like our favorite movies or our favorite TV shows or our favorites, even sports teams or video games. It all comes down to the bean counters and what's going to make us the most money for the least amount of investment.
Biggest thing they're going to care about is ROI.
ROI, return on investment. Well, Matt, thanks for coming onto the channel and giving us your perspective. It's just going to be a matter of time, and we'll have to ride this out and see how it all shakes out. Tell us where we can find you.
You can find me at Matt DLN on Twitter, or listen to the Destination Linux Network Extend podcast, or DLN Extend. That is generally a once a week podcast. Life has been a little crazy right now.
Yeah, I can relate.
But we've talked about before, Jason, you know, we take conversations that are happening in the community throughout the shows and kind of give our takes, where we talk very personally about a lot of stuff we use, etc. We try to let you guys kind of see how we see things. So maybe you can have a different perspective or a different viewpoint on something that might not have been there before. You can also find me kicking around on the Telegram groups at MattDLN, obviously involved with Linux for Everyone, producing some video game content on occasion.
Good stuff too. Speaking of extended conversations, DLNextend.org. I'll have a link at the bottom of this video for that. Watch out for episode 34. If you enjoyed my affordable Linux laptops rant, me and Matt and Wendy took that discussion and kind of expanded it quite a bit. And we get into a lot of really interesting details on that. So DLN Extend number 34. Check it out at dlnextend.org. Matt, thanks for jumping on and chatting with us. And you guys take care and take care of each other. See ya.